In working a lot with plants, I've noticed that all of the pieces of the plant come from the same source. What I mean by that is that the leaves and the stems, they're all connected, right? The roots are connected, and even the bark to an extent. Eventually the bark will separate. It's a bit like a human, how we have hair, and eventually the hair will separate sometimes from the body, or bits of skin will. But ultimately, the leaves are connected in a way through the stems and through the main kind of, core of the tree, the central pillar of it, through the way to the roots. And if you look at like a baby plant, it comes from the seed, and then its little tail comes out, and it forms a root, or its head comes out. It all comes from the seed. The plant all comes from the seed, right? An animal all comes from the seed the same way, and it grows inside of its mother. There is a singular material which we call the idea of the stem cell. And the stem cell is one of these kind of universal materials which forms into anything. And you find people they get therapy where they inject themselves with it and become more youthful and vibrant and vigorous, and start to age backwards and such. The plant assumably would have this kind of cell, and I don't want to use the word cell, I'd rather use the word material. You can think the younger plant is richer in it. It has more of it, because the young plant or the young animal is essentially made up of this universal material. Because it needs to be, in order for it to grow and change. When we're young, we're rapidly adapting and changing and learning the language of our parents and such, and society. Children need to be adapting. A plant, depending on how young it is, will be how much it adapts to its environment. Where you see certain plants when they're older and they grew in these weird, wonky, fallen over ways, and then you think, why did that happen? It's because when it was younger there was something kind of in its way. It's the same way with a human. Some people get spinal issues or structural issues because that's how they continuously are sitting or are acting from a young age. So when we get older, we get stuck in these ways usually, unless you are very healthy, in which case you have a lot more neuroplasticity, physical plasticity. You're able to learn things quicker than others and adapt to your surroundings and such, because you're more fluid. But a lot of the time people will get stagnant and stuck because they don't have this, they're kind of dried out, so to speak, and they're hardened. They've become like the bark, which separates from the tree. Now, if we look at the human body, we can think of the bones and the nails and the hair, and to an extent the skin is the most bark-like, hard material. Well, things like the muscles, of course the skin is also flexible, so it actually what would you say is a flexible thing, but the muscles are also flexible, the tendons. So, but what I was trying to say is the skin can get hard. The muscles and the tendons are flexible, right? It's similar to the tree. The tree is flexible, and the nerves are very, very active. The organs are very active. The eyes are very active part. So there are different levels of density and activity and flexibility to the body. And you can think again, these all came from the same thing. If you think of a baby in the womb being formed, it's all essentially, it looks like this blob that turns into like a sea creature, and then it slowly turns into a kind of, like a reddy pink looking jelly human creature, and then you got a baby, and the baby's head is still all mushy, and sometimes you have to like form the head of the baby when it comes out, apparently, because the bone is that soft. The bones of a child and a baby is more soft. There's the idea that people wouldn't practice things like qigong exercises and such, or they wouldn't start it later in life because their body had already become stuck and all this. Of course, you can, practice it, and it'll actually help you become less stuck, but, maybe things were a bit tougher in rural China, provinces of that place. Going on, so the bones will get tougher with age, the nails will get tougher with age, and the muscles even will get, you can make them tougher with age, so to speak. Make them, tense them and they become hard, relax them and they become soft. The fat is very soft, for example. That's one thing that's very, very soft in the body. So if you look at a tree, the bottom part which touches the earth, like the root of it, but not the roots, it's like this bowl, this kind of bulbous, it's like a how do we put it? Large kind of, like a vase. You think the bottom of a vase, or bottom of some kind of like curvy pottery, the bottom needs to be bigger usually to support the weight of the top, and the stem is smaller. And this bottom part, the roots come out, and of course not always is it really thick or anything. Like some plants can have smaller ones, but I think this is where all the nutrients is, and this is where basically the plant comes out of the root region, and in the body it is the pelvic region, you can think. So the pelvic region, of course, the legs come out, the genitals come out, and the torso is supported from. So, things like Dantian meditation is this tonifying meaning kind of enhancing, training, stimulating, feeding, nourishing this area, because this area I notice is essentially the root of the plant. It's the nutrient. It's like a cup. The bottom of the cup holds the water. Unless it's heated, in the summer, it doesn't flower out, so to speak. So it's holding the nutrients there, right? And if you chop parts off a plant, even sometimes the roots maybe, it'll probably grow from that area. But if you remove that area, the roots may start to, if it's a very annoying, insidious plant, the roots may regrow. But it will take a lot longer and it'll be a lot more difficult. But if you remove that bottom, that base of the plant, it's probably going to disrupt it. So you can think even the roots can become this universal substance again, meaning hypothetically, the body could regrow limbs. And maybe if you're like super high power level, your arm gets chopped off and you regrow a body from the arm, Kind of like a plant, how with a plant you do a clipping of of a stem, right? Coming out of it. And you plant that and it can grow roots. And the bottom area then becomes where the roots come out of. And I guess it becomes that nutrient nutrient cup or chamber or storage area, right? Where I think that is the area that produces this universal matter. And it's definitely related to water. Water is, it's definitely a part of it. And then it makes me think about minerals. The alchemists would talk about minerals and how they grow. Maybe minerals all come from the same substance, or similar substances as well. if we could, study this a bit more, that'd be nice. But I don't know, it's just something to think about where, again, the older we get, usually the more that things separate, right? So you separate into fingernails and skin and bones and muscles, and the plant separates into root and bark and stems and leaves and flowers and fruit and such. But ultimately it all comes, the apple comes from the plant, right? What is the apple? It's like a 3D printing. It's like a biological 3D printer, the apple tree is, and it's creating the apple from its own nutrients, which the nutrients is like a resource that it can use to create stuff. So either the nutrients is the universal matter, or the matter can be made from the nutrients. And I guess the more you want to quantize things and quantize the nutrients or the universal matter into things like carbon and hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, or even simpler, you just say water and mineral, like salt and dirt and light and air. The more air a plant has, and the more light a plant has, maybe it's able to produce different things, or that affects it in a different way, and it becomes a different kind of plant depending on what kind of nutrients it gets. But ultimately, it's a bit like the idea of transmutation of basic things, where maybe they can turn the carbon into nitrogen, maybe it can turn the sunlight into water, or the air into water. And of course you'd assume there'd be easier things to turn. Air would be easier to turn into water. Salt, who knows, maybe that's easier to turn into fire or heat, something like that. I don't know, I don't really know, but you probably get the idea. It's just something to think about, the universal matter of more so biological life in this idea, and also the nutrient chamber. And maybe, if we do meditations and we strengthen this area and we heal it and such, we become stronger and better in ourselves. Anyway, of course, feel free to check the links in the description, and have a nice day.